My son won $31 million and kicked me out. What he discovered the next day was incredibly shocking. Margaret's heart raced as she clenched the phone, the voice on the other end blurring into a whirlwind of disbelief. Jake had won $31 million. It should have felt like a fairy tale, the culmination of every sacrifice she had made for him, every Christmas spent in the hospital instead of home, every sleepless night nursing her patients only to wake up and care for him. Yet beneath the surface, dread clawed at her chest. Her son, once a struggling young man unsure of his path, had suddenly transformed into a beacon of riches, and she couldn't shake the feeling that he would leave her behind. Margaret had spent years nurturing Jake's ambitions. Her sacrifices felt like stepping stones. She had assumed they would lead them both to a better life. But what would happen now that he had everything? Would he even remember the late-night study sessions, the encouragement after rejection? The thought of his newfound arrogance made her stomach churn. He wouldn't need her anymore, would he? Her dedication felt small and insignificant against the magnitude of the jackpot. The phone call spiraled into chaos. Jake, fueled by the confidence of wealth and the influence of flashy new friends, dismissed her as something to be discarded. "I don't need you anymore, Mom," his voice echoed in her ears. Each word was a dagger, driving deeper into the years of love and care she had given. A strange mix of anger and heartbreak flooded her as she packed her few belongings, memories of laughter and support now tainted by the bitterness of betrayal. Her sister's cramped apartment felt suffocating. Surrounded by familiar faces wasn't a relief. Instead, it was a reminder of her isolation. Margaret struggled to accept her reality while wrestling with guilt. Was she an inadequate mother, destined to be forgotten by her own son? The juxtaposition of pride for Jake's success against a profound sense of rejection twisted her heart even further. Meanwhile, Jake reveled in his newfound freedom, throwing extravagant parties to garner attention, feeling invincible for the first time. But the morning light revealed a grim reality as he awoke amidst the chaos of empty bottles and hollow laughter. The friends he had gathered around him felt like shimmers of mirage, genuinely interested in his money rather than him. Was this the life he had envisioned? The loneliness pressed down on him like an elephant, reality snapping at his heels. Truth began to dawn. Wealth could not replace the warmth of family, a realization he was ill-prepared to face. Before we continue, I need to tell you about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system, and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. Margaret, on the other hand, received an unexpected call that could change her life. A prestigious medical institution wanted her, a long-awaited recognition of all those years spent caring for others, finally confirming her worth. Yet, amid her excitement, her thoughts drifted back to Jake and the chasm opening between them. Would he ever understand her sacrifices, her love? As days turned into weeks, both navigated their separate struggles. Jake lost in a whirlwind of superficiality, Margaret grappling with the absence of family love. With tensions rising, an inevitable confrontation loomed on the horizon. What price would they each pay before discovering that true wealth isn't found in the digits of a lottery ticket, but in the bonds they had taken for granted? In their separate worlds, they were beginning to question the life they had chosen. A stirring tension simmering just beneath the surface, an impending clash that neither could foresee. Margaret stood at the threshold of a new beginning, heart pounding as the phone call ended. The prestigious medical institution's offer flickered in her mind like the bright lights of a city she felt too small for. This might be the opportunity she needed to redefine herself after years lost in the shadow of her son. Yet, this path felt bifurcated. One road promised personal fulfillment, while the other tugged at the fraying threads of her relationship with Jake. The next morning, she awakened with a renewed determination. The clutter in her sister's apartment felt suffocating, a constant reminder of her fractured life. Picking up a nearby notepad, she began drafting a plan. The past few weeks had only deepened her conviction that she couldn't remain stagnant. Achieving her career aspirations would mean finding stability and self-worth outside of motherhood. She closed her eyes, envisioning herself wearing the white coat of a respected physician, making a difference, restoring lives. In the ensuing days, Margaret poured herself into her preparations for the new role, meticulously reviewing medical journals, attending workshops, and updating her resume. Each small victory against her doubts felt exhilarating, as if she were reclaiming not only her professional identity but also her sense of agency. Meanwhile, Jake continued to navigate the artificial sea of his life. The parties faded into blurred memories of regret. He had invested in flashy cars and thrown around money like confetti, but loneliness clung to him like a second skin. Faced with empty relationships, he began recalling the true warmth of home, his mother's cooking, her laughter in the hallway, the stories of resilience she'd shared while they navigated hardships together. Could he have traded all that for fleeting glitzy experiences? Half-heartedly peering into his reflection one morning, Jake recognized an unfamiliar stranger staring back. For too long, he had been chasing validation through empty companionships masquerading as friends. A gnawing realization dawned upon him. No amount of money could fill the chasm left by the severed bond with his mother. Guilt coursed through him. He hadn't just pushed her away, he had broken the very foundation of his sense of belonging. As days slipped by, Margaret found her footing. The job offer materialized into reality, her first day nearly within reach. Yet, her thoughts continuously flickered back to Jake, like an old wound that flared up despite her best efforts to forget. She desired to reach out, to extend a hand in reconciliation, but the fear of further rejection stifled her voice. The moment of reckoning arrived with the approach of her first day at work. A gut-wrenching decision hung before her. Should she contact Jake and attempt to mend their rift, or should she proceed with her new life, hoping time would settle the upheaval? The internal battle raged. Ambition whispered in one ear, while maternal instinct screamed through the other. On the brink of making a decision, a frantic knock at her sister's apartment echoed through the silence. Margaret's heart raced. Was it Jake? She opened the door with bated breath, uncertainty crawling beneath her skin. She stood on the precipice of a new chapter, both hopeful and terrified, aware that whatever or whoever awaited her behind that door could change everything once again. Would she be prepared to face her son and the fragility of their connection, or would she let her ambitions overshadow the most important relationship in her life? The clock was ticking, and time would soon reveal whether they were both strong enough to confront truly what lay ahead. The door swung open to reveal Jake, his expression a tumult of uncertainties. He seemed different, his bright clothing a garish contrast to the vulnerability etched across his features. Margaret's heart sank and surged in equal measure. Here was the son she had lost, standing before her, yet she felt the chasm between them grow wider, filled with unsaid words and shared regrets. "Mom!" he breathed, and for a moment the world slipped away. It was just the two of them, bound by an invisible thread of love and pain. A flicker of hope ignited within her, a chance to reclaim what they had lost. But just as quickly, the walls she had built to protect herself loomed dangerously high around her heart. "Jake," she replied, her voice softer than she intended. She searched his eyes, wanting to read his thoughts, but all she found were echoes of hesitation and longing. "What are you doing here?" I couldn't stop thinking about everything," he confessed, struggling to maintain eye contact. "About you. About us." Margaret swallowed, her own fears crashing against her resolve. She had painted a vision of her future with the medical institution so vividly, and now it felt fragile in the face of their reunion. I start my new job tomorrow, she whispered, the admission hanging between them like a fragile balloon. Jake nodded, and for a moment they shared silence, the bitter sweetness of the past and the uncertainty of the future tangled in the air. I know I messed up, he finally said, his voice thick with unshed emotion. I let everything get in the way, and I pushed you away. I didn't mean to. His words pierced through her defenses, and Margaret felt the cracks widening. She had anticipated his return might bring closure, yet here she was, standing at yet another junction, plagued by doubt. Was forgiveness possible after everything? Could they rebuild their relationship amidst the rubble? I wanted to reach out earlier, she started, the impulse to share her ambitions igniting within her. I was afraid you'd reject me again. This opportunity means everything to me, Jake. I can't lose it. In that moment, Margaret realized she was not merely staring into the eyes of her son, but of a reflection, her past ambitions and failures mirrored back at her. As she struggled to articulate her fears, she felt the battle inside her shift. The future no longer felt just about her career, it required addressing their shared wounds. I'm not trying to push you away anymore, Jake said softly. I want to help. I want to know you again, Mom. Margaret's thoughts raced. The potential to regain her son's trust teased at her mind, yet that came with the uncertainty of what their relationship could become. She felt alive again, not just as his mother, but as a woman eager to reclaim her identity. Can we start by just talking? She suggested, her voice steadier now. I don't want to ignore what happened, but I think it's time for both of us to be honest. About everything. His eyes met hers with a mix of hope and fear. Yeah, I'd like that. Just as they began to bridge the gap, a sudden rush surged through Margaret. The dazzling future she envisioned in the hospital dimmed beside the urgency building inside her. A desire not to just make amends, but to confront the darkness in her own heart. She realized this moment would define not just their relationship, but also her path to self-discovery. As they sat down at the small kitchen table, there was a palpable shift in the air, an unspoken agreement to lay bare their vulnerabilities. This reunion could become the crucible they both needed to change, but Maggie was acutely aware. Revealing their scars would come with risks, consequences looming just out of sight. Ultimately, the revelation froze in her thoughts. Would they emerge stronger through their confrontation? Or would those truths further fracture their already tenuous bond? The stakes had never been higher, and she wondered if she truly had what it took to navigate this new, uncharted territory. And as the sun dipped low in the sky, casting warm shadows across their faces, Margaret knew the answers were waiting just on the other side of shared truths. Could she summon the strength to face not only Jake's expectations, but also her unfulfilled promises to herself? The question lingered as they exchanged uncertain glances, the pivotal moment unspooling steadily toward an inevitable confrontation. Margaret watched Jake as he settled into the chair across from her. The old kitchen table, scarred by years of family dinners and discussions, suddenly felt like a stage set for a profound reckoning. Her heart raced, the surrounding silence pressing down against her like a weight. This was no ordinary talk. This was the intersection of lives transformed by pain. "Mom, I think we should talk about what happened," he began, his voice shaking slightly. The gravity of his words hung between them. He paused, searching for the right passage through this tangled mess of their past. Margaret's breath caught. Would he address the fallout that had shattered their family, or tread lightly around it? "I made mistakes," Jake continued, his brow furrowing as he spoke. "But I also feel like I've learned a lot about myself since then. Being away from home, I realized how much I let others influence my decisions. That's what started everything." Margaret's thoughts spun. Was he even aware of the depth of his actions? Could he understand how far-reaching his choices had been, how they had influenced her path? "What do you mean when you say you learned? Can you really grasp everything that happened?" Her voice trembled with both concern and a glimmer of hope. He shifted uncomfortably, eyes downcast momentarily, and she could see him wrestling with the weight of his own admissions. I thought I had it all figured out. I mean, winning that money was supposed to change everything, but all it did was reveal the truth about my relationships, about us. I neglected what really mattered. The remorse was palpable, but she needed to delve deeper. "And what matters to you now, Jake?" she asked, heart pounding with the vulnerability of the moment. "What do you truly want?" He looked back up at her, his gaze steady. "To start over, not just with you, but with myself. I'm tired of the facade, the wild parties, the disbelief that I could be happy doing anything else. All of it just left me feeling more lost than before." Margaret felt her barriers soften, yet the anxiety of allowing hope to blossom weighed heavily on her. What if they opened too many doors? What if the past was more than just a history lesson? The fear of vulnerability lingered, but as he spoke, she remembered that both of them were standing on the precipice of transformation. "Then let's not let our past dictate how we build our present," she proposed, her voice steadier now. "Let's approach this honestly, without the fear of judgment. If we're going to try to revive this relationship, we need to be clear about what we're willing to accept or change." This time, Jake didn't flinch. He nodded earnestly, seemingly ready to dig into the shadows they had avoided for so long. "You're right. I need to hear your side, to understand the impact of my choices. It's important." Margaret felt a surge of determination. This was more than just conversation. It was a crucible of growth, a chance to redefine themselves. But with her resolve came a new anxiety, a question that loomed in the backdrop of her thoughts. Would this journey lead them closer together, or would the burdens they carried rip them apart anew? The sun had disappeared completely beyond the horizon, and the kitchen was now enveloped in a soft glow from a lamp overhead. Shadows danced around them, reflecting the complexities swirling within. It was time. She had to confront the realities of her own dreams, her sacrifices that had become tangled with deep-seated regrets. "Let's start with the truth about why I left," she began, feeling all at once powerful but brittle, conscious of the precarious journey they were embarking on. The shadows in the room seemed to nod in agreement, aware that their honest exploration would either mend a broken relationship or unravel even further what had already been strained. As each word left her mouth, she braced herself for the recoil, unsure if this would be their turning point, together in understanding or further apart in pain. The hour felt late, but inside her, a fire flickered to life. Margaret was ready for whatever came next, even if that meant confronting her own shortcomings. Now, as she opened that door into the past, she muttered a question that hung unspoken in the air. Would they find redemption, or reveal just how deep their wounds ran? The moment of truth lay ahead, tempting her forward into the unknown. Margaret took a deep breath, her heart racing as she prepared to peel back layers of her choices and emotions, choices that had once felt straightforward, but now appeared increasingly complex. "I left because I felt invisible," she confessed, her voice barely above a whisper. "Your father and I were so engulfed in our own struggles that I lost sight of my own identity. I didn't know how to navigate the pain, so I ran." Jake's expression shifted. There was surprise mingled with something akin to understanding. "You felt the same way I did when I was lost in those parties?" She nodded, feeling both exposed and relieved. "Yes. I put on a brave face, thinking I was protecting you from the chaos around us. But in trying to shield you from pain, I left you unprepared to handle it when it inevitably hit." His brow furrowed as thoughts coalesced behind his eyes. "That's deep. But Mom, I'm here now. We have this chance to really talk about us. Isn't that—" He hesitated, searching for the words. "Isn't that what matters?" Margaret watched him, feeling the weight of their shared past laden with regret, longing, and occasional glimpses of hope. "It is, Jake. It's everything we have right now. But we need to dig deeper. I need you to know why I made the choices I did, why it felt necessary to leave. It wasn't about you. It was about me not knowing how to cope. Jake absorbed her words, processing the nuance of her regrets. But running away, that was my move. Exactly, she replied, reinforcement echoing in her tone. Different circumstances, yet the same action. We both ran. We have to own our respective decisions without placing blame. This isn't a competition of pain, Jake. It's an opportunity for renewal. He leaned forward in the chair, the urgency of the moment crystallizing his focus. So, how do we rebuild? How do we make sure we don't let our past dictate our future? For the first time, Margaret could see the flicker of commitment in her son's gaze, a willingness to face uncertainty together. We need to communicate. Be honest about our fears and desires, and create boundaries. No more the perfect family image we projected. We need clarity moving forward. Boundaries, he echoed, the word heavy with significance. So, what do you need from me? Margaret leaned back, pulling the intensity of the air through her lungs. I need you to be honest, even when it hurts. No more facades. If we're going to have this moment, I want it to be real. I'll lay my heart bare if you promise to do the same. Jake swallowed hard, and she could see the emotional armor he had always worn begin to crack. That's a lot to ask, Mom. It's easier to stay silent and avoid pain. I didn't want to hurt you. And now? I want to heal, to find a way to truly connect, to rebuild a foundation that doesn't feel like it could crumble at any moment, he stated, conviction strengthening his voice. Margaret smiled, a flicker of warmth washing over the cold remnants of their fractured past. Then let's face our vulnerabilities. I want to hear your truth. I want you to be able to tell me your fears, your dreams. But we also need to acknowledge the consequences of our choices. The declaration hung thick in the air, heavy with promise and potential. With the shadows of their past looming close, Margaret felt the weight of their confrontation start to forge a new path. She understood that this was a fragile moment, filled with raw emotions, longing for clarity and healing. But still, a lingering question tugged at the edges of her mind. Could they truly obliterate the barriers that years of silence had erected? Their first step into this new territory felt daunting. The prospect of honesty was as liberating as it was terrifying. But she recognized they were both better equipped now to handle it. As they sat locked in this paralyzing moment of expectation, Margaret's heart thudded with an urgency of its own. She knew they were on the brink of something transformative, yet the unspoken fear that had plagued her all along started to resurface. What if they bared their souls only to discover that some wounds were irreparable? With the kitchen enveloped in a silence buzzing with unsaid words, Margaret's thoughts raced ahead, caught between anticipation and dread. Would the truth forge connections and heal frayed bonds, or cast them into deeper despair? The edges of her resolve began to tremble, a part of her questioning if this exchange would lead toward illumination or dissolution. Margaret felt the tension mounted thickly between them, like an electrical current, pulsating in the air. There, in the dim kitchen light, shadows danced over her son's face, reflecting both determination and fear. In the stillness that followed, she contemplated what lay ahead, battling with a disquieting thought that opening up might lead to revelations she wasn't yet prepared for. Jake shifted in his seat, breaking the silence. What did you dream about, Mom? When you left? The question hung in the air like a challenge, forcing Margaret to dive deeper into her turbulent past. I dreamed of freedom, Jake, she said carefully, weighing every word. Freedom from the disappointment, the constant feeling of not being enough. I thought I could find myself outside of that chaos, and in doing so, I lost sight of who I really was. Jake's eyes narrowed as he processed the weight of her admission. Did you ever try to find help before running? Or was it just about escape? The question struck her like a dagger, unlocking feelings she had buried for years. I didn't feel like I deserved help. That was part of my struggle. I convinced myself that I needed to figure it out alone. I thought leaving would give me the strength I seemed to lack. That's not how it works, though, is it? He leaned back, arms crossed, a defensive posture that hinted at his own uncertainties. "No," Margaret conceded. "But I didn't know there was strength in admitting weakness, strength in seeking support." Her vulnerability seemed to stir something in Jake. "They say everything happens for a reason. Maybe you leaving made me realize my own escape wasn't the solution. All the parties, the numbness. It was my way of running, too." "Recklessness as a form of avoidance," she echoed softly. "The paths may differ, but the reasons often don't." Jake examined her, and for a moment the distance between them felt pityingly thin. "So, we both need to learn how to feel again? To stop running?" Margaret nodded, her heart quickening with each uncharted feeling unfurling within her. "Yes, it's terrifying to confront this. But if we're committed to sharing the truth, we need to start taking steps towards healing rather than hiding." "Is that your plan, then? To work on our emotional health?" A hint of a smile tugged at her lips as she contemplated the statement. "It's more than a plan. It's a commitment. I want to see you, to understand you, and, in return, have you know me completely." "Okay," Jake replied, resolve lining his features. "But what about Dad?" The mention of her husband sent shivers down Margaret's spine, as if stepping through uncharted territory again. "We can only control our actions. If he chooses to join us in our healing, that's up to him." The realization came clearer. Her relationship with Jake didn't need to be defined by their history with his father. "Do you think he'll change, once he realizes what's happened?" Jake's voice softened, hope batting against skepticism. "I can't predict anyone's choices. I can only focus on us and strive for an openness that might yet spark change," she replied, each word empowering her resolve for their future. A tentative understanding blossomed between them, yet the uncertainty of what was still unsaid loomed overhead. Could they strip away years of anguish and discover something authentic? The air was saturated with urgency to confront the entire truth. "Mom, I know we've talked about our pasts, but what about moving forward? What if, after all this, we both discover that healing is too slow for what we need?" His vulnerability painted a clear image of their fragile state. "That's something we'll have to face together. We may stumble and put our trust to the test. I believe we're capable of that, even through the mess." As they sat grappling with the weight of potential and fear, Margaret perceived the formidable barriers of silence starting to crack beneath their sincerity. In that shared moment, Margaret sensed the dawning of a cautious optimism, yet the nagging doubt of her husband's role shadowed her thoughts. What if his denial poisoned their efforts? Feeling the pendulum between hope and despair, she couldn't shake the anxious question looming before them. Would they emerge stronger, or find the ground once more give way beneath their feet? The answers felt just within reach, yet their heartbeats echoed the urgency of a conflicted journey. Everything hinged on the next step. Would Jake's emotions draw closer, or would they retreat under the weight of unresolved pain? The silence stretched long after Jake's question, echoing the emotional tremor between them. Margaret's thoughts accelerated, her mind racing over her plan to confront the burden of the past and embrace the future. What did healing even look like, and how could they inch closer together when Jake's apprehensions hung heavily in the air? "Maybe we could start small," she suggested, her voice steady, though the quiver of uncertainty lingered like an uninvited guest. "We can establish ground rules for our conversations. If we're going to dig deep, we must ensure it's a safe space." A flicker of interest ignited in Jake's eyes, but doubt quickly followed. What if it turns into an argument, or if one of us says something we can't take back? Margaret peeled back the layers of her fear to reveal a profound insight. "That risk is always present, Jake, in any vulnerable interaction. But trust is built through attempting, not perfecting. We can articulate our feelings without blame, allowing room for misunderstandings." He held her gaze, a silent challenge brewing beneath his surface. Margaret sensed the tension coalescing into resolve. "Can we start now? Just an experiment?" "An experiment," she murmured, the term sinking in as she grasped its significance. They could conceptualize this journey as a practice, a lighter approach to heavy truths. Taking a deep breath, Jake leaned in slightly. Okay, if it's an experiment, then I want to know why you didn't come back once you realized you weren't escaping. The question whipped through Margaret's core like a jolt, a visceral reminder of her choices, both brave and foolish. I was too ashamed to turn back. I thought seeking help would feel like admitting failure, and therein a certainty that I still wasn't enough. That feels unfair, Jake responded softly, shaking his head. Leaving me behind because you didn't think you were worthy of help? Didn't you think about me? Every day, Jake, she whispered, honesty piercing through the weighty facade. But my vision was clouded by my own struggles. I was lost in my own battle and couldn't grasp what your presence meant. I thought silence would serve us both. His face shifted into a mix of sadness and frustration, and Margaret instinctively reached out across the table, searching for connection. But that was wrong, Jake stated, his jaw tightening. I guess I was right about something. I'm running too. I've pushed all my friends away this past year, you know. It was startling to see her son admit such a painful truth. Maybe we both need to break the cycle. We lean on ourselves at the expense of connection, she suggested gingerly. Jake shifted in his seat, a glimmer of realization breaking through. What if we try something else? We could call a therapist together, like a team. Unease wrapped around Margaret's heart. The thought of involving another person, of revealing raw emotions to a stranger, felt monumental. Yet, the prospect of additional support beckoned her like a beacon. I've thought about that, but can we really commit to being open in front of someone else? I think we have to. We've reached a point where this isn't just about us, Mom. It's about learning how to put our relationships first, especially if we want Dad to wake up. The insight was piercing, igniting a flicker of hope within Margaret. They were more interconnected than she had realized, and perhaps the collaborative path could lead them toward a desired future. It felt daunting and exhilarating at once. Okay, she said finally, feeling the weight of the moment solidify into resolve. Let's give it a try. We'll make an appointment, and I promise to be open. And I'll commit to actually discussing my feelings from now on, Jake replied, sincerity flashing in his eyes. Just as the air around them began to shift, tinged with renewed energy, Margaret's phone buzzed unexpectedly on the table, the noise jarring them back from their fragile connection. She picked it up, seeing her husband's name flashing on the screen. Anxiety coiled tightly in her gut, and she hesitated to answer. The thought of confronting him led to a swirl of questions. Where was he? What was he thinking? Mom? Jake's voice cut through her contemplating fog. Are you all right? The heaviness in her silence echoed back at her, a stark reminder that they were still in the midst of navigating unsteady ground. But in that moment, her heart steeled. Perhaps this confrontation was just as critical as the bond they were forging, a test of their newfound commitment to truth and healing. As she prepared to answer the call, Margaret couldn't shake off the gnawing feeling brewing beneath it all. Would this phone call reinforce their renewed path, or could it send everything spiraling into chaos once more? The answer lay within the echoes of that ringing tone, and a choice that could determine the course of their future ahead. The phone's insistence was relentless, pulling Margaret deeper into an emotional quagmire. She took a deep breath, trying to steady the tremor in her fingers. This was it. A moment of decision not just for her, but for Jake as well. Mom? Are you really okay? Jake's concerned voice tugged at her, an anchor in the storm. With her heart pounding, Margaret accepted the call, bracing herself for the uncertain tide. Hello? She managed, the word feeling foreign on her tongue. Margaret! Ryan's voice came through, heavy with a veil of years she had tried to forget. We need to talk. His tone sparked her defensiveness. What's there to talk about? You're the one who left. I didn't leave, he said, the edge in his voice dulling under fatigue and regret. I've been away for work, but I'm back now. I need to know what's happening with you and Jake. Margaret glanced at Jake, who was listening intently, the connection fraying between them as Ryan's presence loomed over the conversation. You want to know what's happening? We're trying to rebuild, Ryan. Isn't that what you wanted? Rebuilding? Look, I know I wasn't there for you both, but I want to fix this. A flicker of rage sparked within her. You think saying that makes it better? You think just coming back and wanting to fix it is enough? As Ryan began to respond, she felt the walls she'd carefully constructed begin to quake. The chaos of their past, colliding with the fragile hope she and Jake had just grasped, felt like a landslide threatening to consume her. Margaret, he pressed on, a hint of desperation in his tone. I'm still your husband. We can get through this if we— No, Ryan, you don't get to dictate this anymore. The words broke out in defiance, her spirit rallying against years of subservience to his whims. You've had lead on our life. Now it's time for us to choose our path. She cut the call, slamming her eyes shut to steady herself against the rush of emotions spiraling within. Mom, how do you feel? Jake's voice was cautious, probing, a lifeline she hadn't realized she needed. Margaret opened her eyes, the momentary anger shifting into a clearer awareness. I'm angry, but relieved. It's like lifting a fog that I wasn't sure accounted for my life. I finally feel I have a say in my own life. You didn't have to do that alone. His words were thoughtful, but the shadows in his expression mirrored her internal chaos. I thought I did, but maybe I kept you at a distance because I was so immersed in handling my own needs. I see now that it only isolated us both. Jake nodded, and in that quiet, the weight of past decisions hung for both of them. So, what do we do now? We take ownership of our feelings, Margaret declared, her resolve crystallizing. Let's make that appointment, and I'll pour my heart out. I want to be straight with our therapist and with you. We need to tackle this together. Jake leaned back in his chair, his relief palpable. Right, I can't keep burying mine either. As they exchanged understanding glances, an unforeseen bond began to form, this anxiety, confusion, and hope melding their experiences into something newly vibrant. But just as the air around them thinned into a space of raw potential, a vibration pulsed through her phone again. Glancing at the screen, her stomach twisted. Another call from Ryan. Jake, In the middle of her sentence, the phone stopped ringing, but the weight of his impending presence lingered. Would he take this as a reckless attempt to reclaim his lost authority? Mom, let's not go back to that uncertainty. We've chosen a new beginning, right? Yes, she breathed, determination mixing with anxiety, both types coexisting in a reality that no longer had space for intimidation or silence. They were both confronting their issues, challenging their fears. Jake cleared his throat, catching her attention. Then let's get the therapist on the line. It's time for all of us to talk, even Dad. Margaret stared at him, their gazes locked. There it was, the hook of possibility intertwining with a looming confrontation. Change demanded courage, and in that moment, she understood. The path ahead would not just be one of healing for herself and Jake, but an opportunity to dismantle the very foundation that Ryan had built for them all. The moment of truth had arrived, and the question remained, were they now strong enough to face it? Margaret settled into her chair, her heart racing as visions of the upcoming therapy session played in her mind like a relentless film reel. She could almost hear the therapist's calm voice urging her to dig deeper, to confront the patterns of behavior that had long governed her life. What if she raised the issue of Ryan's return? Would that open a floodgate of unresolved anger, or would it bring a much-needed clarity? Mom? Jake's cautious voice snapped her back from the spiral of uncertainty. He was watching her with concern, his brow furrowed. You okay? Yes, just thinking, she replied, forcing a smile. But beneath the surface, doubt simmered. This was uncharted territory for both of them. Vulnerability was a language they needed to learn fluently. Should we prepare anything for the therapist? Jake leaned forward, engaged. Maybe. We could write down our feelings. The hint of excitement in his voice buoyed her. It might help to collect our thoughts before we go. The idea of articulating their individual struggles in written form felt daunting, yet liberating. They each grabbed a notepad, the weight of the past pressing against them, forging an invisible bond in their shared effort. Margaret felt a renewed sense of purpose. As she stared at the blank page, she hesitated. What should she reveal? Torn between the urge to shield Jake from the complexities of their past and the need to be transparent, she wrestled with the duality of mothering and being honest. Okay, she said, breaking the silence that had enveloped them. I'll start. I feel... She paused, collecting the fragmented emotions. I feel scared, but hopeful. Scared of what Ryan's presence might mean for us, hopeful that we can get through this together. Jake nodded, pen floating above the paper. I feel like I've been living in a fog. I want to clear it up so we can finally move forward. There was a raw honesty in his words, and as Margaret watched him, pride swelled within her. Here was her son, stepping into his own feelings, and in that moment, she realized how much she had underestimated his emotional resilience. They were both teetering on the edge of revelation, the potential for growth flickering like a candle, struggling against the wind. But with every revelation, memories whispered from the recesses of her mind. What would Ryan's involvement do to this fragile alliance they were forming? Would he sink them back into combative tides? Her heart raced again at the thought. Mom, what are you thinking? Jake's voice lured her back again. I keep asking myself the same question. Am I doing the right thing by inviting him back into our lives? What if he disrupts our progress? Her voice quivered slightly as doubt clawed at her certainty. Jake's expression hardened, determination flooding his features. We have to set boundaries. You've already started being honest. That's a big step. We can do this together. Margaret studied him, absorbing the weight of his conviction. It forced her to confront her own hesitations. Jake was ready to face the storm, to battle through the emotional chaos together. As evening shadows deepened outside, bringing a golden hue to their chaotic living room, the doorbell rang, jolting them both. The sound echoed with unexpected weight, invoking tension that settled like a shroud over them. Do you think it's... Jake looked toward the door, eyes wide, breath caught in his throat. Margaret's heart raced as she rose, dread coiling in her stomach. The evening, which had promised a safe space for reflection, suddenly brimmed with uncertainty and challenge. I don't know, she whispered, already envisioning Ryan standing at the threshold, his presence poised to obliterate the progress they had just embraced. As Margaret opened the door, a mix of fear and resolve pulsed through her. The moment of truth loomed larger than the door itself. Would they falter, or could they forge ahead? Would this encounter mark the beginning of healing, or the onset of deeper conflict? Her heart drummed a fierce rhythm against her chest, the stakes higher than ever. The next chapter of their lives was unfolding before her. Margaret took a deep breath, steeling herself as she swung the door open. Ryan stood there, his expression straddling the line between guilt and defiance, a man haunted yet unyielding. The cool air enveloped her like a shroud, sharpening her resolve. This was the moment. She refused to shy away any longer. Ryan, she greeted, her voice firm. What do you want? His gaze flickered back and forth between her and Jake, lingering on the tension that permeated the air. I came to talk, he said, his tone measured. About us. Margaret's heart raced. About us? Or about you? The words poured out, infused with years of pent-up resentment. She wasn't here to provide him an easy passage. She was here to reclaim her narrative. Both, he replied, a flicker of apprehension mingling with his confidence. I realize I have no right to demand anything, but I want, no, need to understand where we stand. I want to be part of this family again." Her initial surge of indignation ebbed, replaced by hesitation and the complexity of what was unfolding. Wasn't this what she wanted? A chance to redefine their relationship? A chance to face the truth? But did she truly believe in his commitment? Jake shifted beside her, stepping forward slightly, capturing Ryan's attention. "If we're going to talk, we need to lay it all on the table. Mom and I have been working on ourselves, and if you want to be part of our lives, you must be open too. No more pretending. No more running." A shadow crossed Ryan's face. "You two seem to have made progress without me. I wasn't around. I was trying to provide, to keep everything intact." His voice trailed off, realization dawning on him. "Intact?" Jake's voice snapped sharply. "You mean complacent? You left us both feeling abandoned." For a moment, Ryan stood silent, eyes searching, attempting to reconnect pieces of a shattered past. "You're right. I wanted to be a good provider but forgot to be a good husband and father. I see that now." The honesty in his tone felt different, layered with vulnerability. Margaret observed the shift in her husband, her heart cautiously lifting. Was it possible that he had begun grappling with his own frailty? She could see the reflection of their failures in him. "Okay," she finally said, pushing herself forward, determined not to tiptoe around the truth anymore. "If we're going to start anew, it needs to be based on honesty and accountability. Action matters more than words. Are you willing to show up for us, Ryan?" His eyes dropped, shame shadowing his features, but the air between them pulsed with possibility. "I will. I want to be better, if it's not too late," he admitted, the weight of admission heavy between them. As Jake glanced at Margaret, she met his anxious gaze. They were at a crossroads, a pivotal moment charting a course towards either reconciliation or ruin. "Let's not make promises we can't keep," Jake elaborated. "If you're going to be in our lives, we need to establish boundaries. We'll talk about our past. What you did hurt us, but you also need to understand that your re-entry comes with responsibilities." "Agreed," Ryan answered, his demeanor shifting. A hint of respect glimmered as he looked at Jake. "Just tell me how I can help bridge that gap." Margaret felt a shift inside her as she realized how far they had all strayed. "We need a starting point," she said, voice steady. "Therapy, together. We can meet with a professional who can guide us through all of this. This is not just about us fixing one another. This is about rebuilding trust and understanding." The notion hung in the air, palpable and crucial. Would he agree, or shy away as he had so many times before? "I'm willing to try," Ryan responded slowly, measured conviction in his tone. "If you'll allow me that chance." A rush of relief coursed through Margaret. For so long, she had felt isolated and broken. Now, perhaps all three of them could face their fears together. "Well, that's a start," she said, determination rising within her. "Let's schedule an appointment. Let's commit to transparency." As Ryan nodded, a semblance of hope ignited within Margaret. Meanwhile, Jake reached out, placing a hand on his mother's arm, a silent show of solidarity. Here they were, three people, once fractured, now standing at the precipice of renewal. The heaviness they'd carried felt less burdensome. Margaret realized she was no longer merely a shadow waiting on the sidelines for recognition. She was a voice, a participant, reclaiming her narrative alongside her son and husband. The next few months would not be easy. The road to healing would be fraught with challenges. Yet, in this moment, Margaret had found the courage not only to confront Ryan, but to affirm her own identity, a woman worthy of love, forgiveness, and a better tomorrow. Jake turned to her with a newfound confidence shining in his eyes. "We can do this, Mom, together." "Yes," she breathed, feeling a powerful shift within her, an affirmation of her own journey. Together. In that instant, Margaret felt the chains of silence and inadequacy begin to shed. This was the first step, the beginning of true reconciliation and healing. Subscribe immediately to the channel to not miss the next exclusive emotional stories. Leave a like now to feed the algorithm. Your engagement matters. Comment your reactions and theories about the ending. Your thoughts are important. Share instantly this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this conclusion. Don't wait even one more second to share. True fans of personal overcoming stories know the power of supporting each other through these actions.